Hey everybody, this is Carson.
Hi, I'm Sean Robinson. What are we taking a looking at today, Carson?
We're taking a look at Inio Asano's Goodnight Punpun. I did a video already about his Dead Dead Demons Destruction book, which is about to finish up. They're about to release the final volume of that in English. But this is he's one of my two favorite current manga artists. This is the book I was first introduced to him with, and I think it's his emotionally richest book. So I wanted to maybe spend more time on this one, but any of his work is good. And then you were saying that you were familiar with him from earlier work of his.
Yeah, so as far as I know, the first thing of his that came out in English was one volume release from Viz called Solanin,
Mhm.
and the art was really impressive. I really admired the art, but it it felt kind of fairly empty story wise, and was fairly shocked to see this. It's just like you know unhinged
Oh, you didn't like
visually.
Solon as a story then, huh?
No, I mean, I haven't read it in since it came out, so I should just say that first. But yeah, I mean, no, I was not impressed by it as a story. I thought it was a sort of genre piece,
Okay.
whereas Goodnight Punpun. I mean, what genre are we talking about here? We got like a tender story about a kid with a really difficult life, but the kid happens to be represented by a
I
bird
think
hand
people would
puppet.
say magical realism.
Yeah.
Like I think about like Tori's really into Murakami, and I've only read a couple of his books. Kafka on the Shore being the one, but he's probably, I don't know his first name, but like the most famous Japanese novelist that has been translated into English.
Right.
And this feels kind of like a Murakami book to me, where it's pretty much just day-to-day life,
Mhm.
but then just like really surreal at the same time. There's these moments of surreality to it. So I think whatever that is, it's maybe I like Solonin better because I was able to see it through the lens of this, where he's focusing on day-to-day stuff.
Right.
And maybe Solonin's too day-to-day, and then this one is where he like levels up, but I was able to see it back through that lens. But yeah, I mean, right out the gate, um, this is the main character here, Pun Pun, and he's represented through this bird. And I know, Sean, you haven't read all 14 volumes. That this
No.
collection that I have from Viz is just like the first two
Right.
volumes
And
collected in one.
that's what I've read so far, and
Yeah.
really impressed. I really had no idea where it was going to go. And you know, uh, aside from the rather shocking like visual motif of our main character being represented, like I said, like a bird hand puppet, a
Yeah.
kid's drawing of a bird. I'm not really clear, but you've got this really awesome visual motif, and it's like a great contrast between the rest of it. And then his ink line is just he really lets himself, you know, fly with it. You can see that Pun Pun is mostly blow ups. It looks like. So I'm guessing that he would draw these tiny and then blow them up on the studio photocopy or whatever.
It looks intentionally rough. Um, and this is something he does throughout all of his books. The interior monologue is always like a black panel, and he
Hmm.
always does this like column down the middle of a page. This is throughout all of his works,
Right.
and just visual thing for him. But yeah, these look blown up and intentionally rough. And the
Similar to the.
adults are always really goofy, really great facial expressions, really great character artist.
I I was not surprised to hear that he'd been on Monben because it seems to me like he's definitely influenced by Mr. Monben himself.
Kurosawa, yeah,
Yeah, in terms
absolutely.
of the cartooning for the adults, those like extreme facial expressions, the balance between a calligraphic aspect and a sort of invisible technique for the a lot of the backgrounds. So Pun
Yeah,
Pun's
and then the absolute maybe this is something we should try and figure out at some point. I don't know if you know how to pull it off, but he's obviously using photographs and manipulating them in Photoshop to get these super rich, super detailed backgrounds, and he perfects that as he goes along. Like, by the time you get to Dead Demon, they start to look more like drawings again for
Mm,
a while. But I mean, every panel has a full-on background. He's never taken the cheap way out there.
right.
And then you get the like this photocopied face showing up, and this is God. And every night he says like, "Tinkle tinkle, dear God, tinkle hoy," and like that's how he can call God.
His
Um,
uncle has taught him this incantation. We find out, later in the second volume that his uncle is actually an atheist of some type. Um, but his uncle is the brother of his mom, and mom and dad have an abusive, difficult relationship. It's implied, at least in the portion that I've read, that the dad is beating his mom, and that she
yeah,
attempts suicide at a certain point. And
and the whole family's represented with the bird. So I love the mom is like this little bird puppet thing with these tits
right.
sticking straight out. And just to go like to the plot of the story, I'm sorry I don't have tabs like normal. We had a thought we were going to talk about a different book today. This at the very beginning, you get this little girl, Aiko, I think is how you would
Hmm.
say her name, that comes to class, and Punpun immediately, she's like the new girl in class, and Punpun immediately falls in love with her. And Asano's so good at drawing like that like just charming face that you would fall in love
Yeah.
with too. That's something that's in all of his books. Yeah, and then he has a really terrible home life. And he's falling in love with this girl and trying to get her to like him. I like this type of stuff too, where he's
Hmm.
like blurring out that he's so visually inventive. Yeah, there's the mom with the weird like cartoon boobs sticking straight up.
It does these beats at the end of beginning and end of each chapter with these single panel locations. I thought that those were interesting too. Also, another little weird formal thing is he puts uh, page numbers inside.
What do you mean?
Oh, are those not on this? Okay.
I don't know. Maybe, yeah, maybe because you were reading like a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
scan of it. Oh, and these great faces. And the adults throughout the book are always like, they're just strange, weird characters. So it's like a kid's view of like adult behavior where you
Right.
just really don't understand. You don't understand adult behavior. So I don't think it's to be taken literally that these people are doing stuff like this. I think it's just a kid's view on it. Uh,
Yeah. So, do you think that they're I mean, the principal and the vice principal are not literally playing hide and seek during school?
no, I don't think so. I think that's just a metaphor for how the kids are perceiving the principals is just like gone,
Right.
like what are the adults doing.
Yeah.
um so eventually Pun and Aiko talk about escaping the planet and going to planet Pun, which is like his own planet where they'll be safe. And he tells her he wants to do that. I want to protect you because I love you. And she's so excited about that. And they start having a relationship. And at some point, she tells him, it's an important plot point. She tells him that if you lie to me, I'll kill you.
Right.
And they start to have there's a whole group of friends that you're introduced to, and they go on some kind of adventures. And Pun does lie to her.
Right.
Here's
Because
some of
they're
the friends.
they're looking at a really grimy porno magazine, and the kids are interested in trying to figure out the mysteries of
Here we go.
sex and
Yeah.
everything. And
Oh,
he
and here's
lied.
the scene. This is the scene that sold me on I was already enjoying the book, but this scene where he masturbates for the first time and like the absolute fury of it all. Um,
And he asks his uncle whether you can die from your brain being liquefied.
like squirting out of you. Yeah. My brain squirted out of my wiener. And there's stuff like that that's just I don't know. It feels very real to me,
It
not
does.
that that's exactly what I thought, but oh, and he's got all these like he's been looking at pictures of genitals.
Right.
It just feels like very much like a kid trying to figure out sexuality in the world and filtering it through lens. Here's his Planet Pun Pun.
How do you think he got in touch with all this as a 27-year-old artist? I mean, it just seems like that would be a heavy lift.
Well, it seems to me like most of his work up through Pun Pun was about kind of the struggles of being a young guy, you
Mm,
know. When he switches to Dead Dead Demon, then it seems to be more about the characters are young girls. It's not so much through the male lens. So it just seems like the thing that he was kind of on for a while. I don't know. It seems all his work is very dark and bleak and really black, like really, really dark black comedy. So I don't know. It just seems like his personality that he's just been thinking about and mulling these things over and needing to express them. But I mean, some super innovative imagery too,
yeah.
and
Uh,
that continues in Dead Dead Demon.
if you want to analog to the plot, if you take away the visual motif of the bird puppet or whatever, it really, some aspects of the first and second volume feel a little bit more like Stephen King's The Stand. Um, they have this video that these boys are trying to keep secret. They're going to watch this porno, and the porno is taped over by this guy who says that he's murdered his entire family, and he's left the bodies in a certain location along with some money, and please go to where the bodies are.
Yeah,
And
which
get the
is what we're
money.
looking at here. This guy, actually, maybe that spoke to me because there was a time as in my early 20s where me and my friends would go dumpster diving and we'd go behind like thrift shops and stuff and we'd grab they'd throw away bags of clothes and
Right.
toys and stuff and we'd clean them up and then we'd go we called it reverse begging. We'd go in front of like Walmart with all this stuff that we had like toys and clothes that we had gotten cleaned up and then like give it we'd say, hey, we have too much stuff, help me out and take some of my stuff, and we'd always get kicked out. But on one of those dumpster dives we found a bag full of it was obviously all one kid's stuff with a wallet and it had her junior high ID in it still. And then there was a video in there and we were so terrified to watch the video. It was something totally innocuous, but we were like, oh my God, what if this has been taped over? And we were worried about exactly this situation. It turned out to just be, I don't know, some stupid movie. But we watched that stupid movie all the way through because we felt obligated to see if
Right.
some guy had like kidnapped this young girl and like filmed himself doing something untoward. We didn't want to watch whatever the movie was, but
Yeah.
we were worried about exactly this. Yeah, so they go on that adventure, and that's what eventually leads to him lying to Aiko.
Right.
Um, is there?
That's Aiko's mom, who's visiting the uncle's residence, and you find that Aiko and her mom are representatives of some type of religious cult. At least that's the way that the uncle sees it.
Yeah, and this becomes more important as the story goes.
And that turns out to be
This
the thing.
character here.
That's the lie that he's caught in, because he had initially told her that he was going to walk her home, that he lived the same direction that she does. And she's at his house and sees, oh, hey, he lives here. He lied to me about going with me. And then, of course, he's genuinely terrified. Not only does she hate me, she's going to kill me.
Yeah, she's threatened to kill me. Um, yeah, here you see her reaction, and she's so sad. Like terrified that he lied, but also I think a bit terrified and embarrassed that her mom's like selling this
Yeah.
miracle water.
Right. Yeah.
um, and then I didn't go reread. Oh, I love this too. This guy, what's his name? Shimizu.
Hmm.
He worships this god of poop. So that's another one of these bizarre like, and he draws it like a kid would draw it. And this is another ongoing theme that comes back as these characters age. There's this he shows up in this kid's drawing, and then he's like this god figure with the little poop swirly on his head. So Shimizu versus the god of poop. Um, there's a really good. Don't see that in manga often.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And Sean, you read it. You just read it. So, was there a time jump yet?
No, not yet.
There's not giving too much away to say that. So this second book is just them dealing with
Yeah,
the warehouse, right? And one of
that's
the
right.
kids' fathers owned the warehouse
Right.
or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a
You,
lot of this again,
yeah,
these kind of
you see
internal
some of the
monologues.
visual totems of his memory here. There's a few scenes where he's sort of going back through everything that he's experienced so far, and including like him poorly playing a melodica. And that little visual that you had there, his bed being lifted by helicopters, and he's going through his memories, and then you have the melodica lined up with the god that he appears to him and mocks him. It just seems so authentic to like a neurotic child. That was the thing I was really impressed by the most, is just how well observed all of these things seem.
Yeah, and like oh here, like there's the melodica waving
Yeah,
to him. It's very like Nemo too, like being on the bed lifted like that. Um, it's a little hard for me because I have like the whole thing in my head.
right,
So some of talking about it in the bomb. This is another thing I associate with Inio Asano though, is these very like cosmic, beautiful moments
right.
where he's very interested in atmosphere. And I've heard him talk about his interest in location, that
Hmm.
he wants to make a manga that this
Yeah,
kind of
it's
stuff right
unbelievable.
here. Absolutely magical. Um, so atmosphere and location are a big part of it. And I heard him talking about wanting to build an entire town as a three-dimensional model and make
Mm.
the town the story. The Wonderful World, I think you said you had read that as well. A
Oh,
Wonderful
just
World.
no, I just knew about it, had some exposure to it. I hadn't read the whole thing. No.
It's a thing that has, like, intersecting stories throughout a space, and you're kind of following
Right.
the characters through this same chunk of space-time.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see that he's engaged with that. Like, it's not just like fill in random location here. Like all the stuff that takes place at the warehouse is, very, very aware of, the size of the place, and they're exploring it, and so that's part of like the story, is the actual place that it takes place in.
Well, and
Um,
even like, "Hey, yeah, I live in that direction," and then he turns out living in the opposite direction,
right,
and her sense of, like, she doesn't want someone to follow her home and find out what mom's doing, and
right,
or she wants to verify that he doesn't live in an area that her mom's gonna be going through.
right.
That sense of space and place is very important to everything. These are the kind of drawings he'll do that are just like these kind of heartbreaking faces,
Yeah,
and he's so good at those. Like if you were that age, of course, this is the girl that you would fall in love with.
right.
She has that charm to her.
Yeah, the pacing is just incredible too. Um, he has a real feel for how things flow and how to stop you. I love the like Jackson Pollock, you know, freak out happening at the
Well,
bottom of
now
that
that he
page
has that
there.
whole two-page spread of that too,
Right.
which is funny. So yeah, I just absolutely adore this book. It's like you said, the reality of it all, like the well-observed reality of this situation is so I don't know, it's just so good. Like it's like this is the kind of stuff I want to do, something that's
Yeah.
so human in that way. But then I think his sense of experimentation is maybe what keeps you engaged. Whereas,
Right.
like, if you didn't like Solonin, I thought Solonin was like equally well observed, but there's none of the surreality to it, and I could see where it would just seem too day to day, where one's not engaged. Did
Well,
you
he
not? Sorry, go
he
ahead.
I mean, there's something about the mechanism of breaking your visual reality that sort of takes out some of the barriers for me. I think part of the problem with my first reads of Solonin is had just recently been the age of the characters.
Oh, it
You
was
know,
too close to home.
it's easier to say no to it. Um, Whereas this is so charming on its face, and it's like the having this visual motif provides another reason to say yes to the initial stages, and like enables a different kind of engagement.
Well, and Scott McCloud talked about that in Understanding Comics. It was a big thing that always, I mean, that whole book sticks in my mind, but talking about how in manga they would do these realistic backgrounds with the Cipher characters. And because the character's a Cipher, it's easier to project yourself into it. So you
Right.
can like inhabit the little avatar moving
Right.
through the story. And Punpun's probably the most Cypherist character I've ever seen
Yeah.
in the real world, because I mean, other than the fact that his friends refer to him as a he, like the drawing itself is completely genderless, unlike the mom.
Right.
um, but the other thing is, and I'm assuming you would have seen this. This is why I asked about the time jump. He goes through uh, summer vacation goes by, and he
Right.
goes through a kind of mental change. So he changes, and then the Cipher changes.
Right. Yeah, I
He
noticed
kind
that.
of puts on a new face, and this continues. You wouldn't have seen it yet. I'm really curious to see how you continue to respond to it. But this evolution of the Cipher continues, and that's something. I'm glad there's some of that in this book. And he only puts it on for a minute. This little kissy face thing,
Hmm.
and then like he has this interaction with Aiko, and it just kind of puts him back into the same little kid that he was.
Hmm.
So he goes back to the Punpun, but this weird little kissy face, with the eye
Right.
instead of just the dots. Those type of transformations continue to happen throughout the
Huh.
book, and I think that's a really fascinating kind of formal strategy to represent the different personalities that we wear and the different faces we choose to put on and take
Right.
off. And also, since it is a coming of age story, there's certain things that life forces on you and that life will force on Punpun that cause those changes as well.
Hmm.
It's not always things that we put on. So some of them are chosen and some of them are exterior. And I think that's just a really well observed thing about human nature that's summed up very succinctly in the drawings and pictures like this. I know this is a photograph that's been manipulated, but I don't care. It's so effective.
Well, it's a fantastic book, and I hope that everybody goes out and reads the first volume. Are they all available in English now, Carson?
Yeah, they're all available in English. And
Great.
I think it's a pretty popular book. I don't think it's selling out. I don't think it's like sold out and you can't get a hold of it. So
Okay.
this is one of my top comics of all time, top series of all time, and I would highly recommend that everyone go get it. And then I look forward to checking in and seeing
Yeah.
how your understanding of the book evolves, because like it only gets weirder and crazier from here.
I'm excited to hear that. You occasionally hit. I occasionally read a manga series that really grabs me by the balls. The first 100 pages, and then you start to feel the success treadmill take over, where somebody's like, nope, stretch this out. You know, you want to be able to keep on selling, so why not make something? Like there's this like string that pulls it along. That all of a sudden the momentum shifts, but I haven't felt that yet in this. So I was
No,
really
and
gratified to see that.
he fights that. Like that's my it's a ways away in the story, but the fight against that shows up within the narrative a little bit, and that's the only point where I actually check out
Huh.
of Punpun. And then he went and made another book called Downfall, which is all about it's very obvious. It's not presented as autobiographical, but it's very obvious that he's frustrated with the positive critical reception he's getting, but the negative sales, and that the editors are pushing for something more mainstream. and he
Right.
wants to do something more personal. So while he's working on Dead Demon, and even in the Downfall book, he's talking about, fine, I'll just go make some shitty sci-fi thing, which is not what Dead Demon is all. It's very human and richly observed as well. But he felt like he had to couch that in a sci-fi, I think.
Mm.
And Downfall is like him like going and making a personal project on the side. So there is that thing you're worried about is very much like, you can tell that he fought with every ounce of his being to get through Punpun without that happening.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing the next few volumes, and I hope that you guys read it too. Carson, because this has such a strong visual motif, do you have any idea what the antecedent might be for it?
Like what he's pulling from?
Yeah.
There's something some other book. I can't. Do you have an answer to that, or are you just asking?
I don't. I some of the early work of Usamaru Furuya has some aspects of it, but it's sort of in a joke comic context. So I think that that's a little bit different.
No, there's some other book that we're gonna get to.
I'll be out in a second.
There's some other book that we're gonna get to, or that I'm gonna review. There's something that I have sticky notes in where I thought that could be it, but I cannot for the life of it. It might even be in Berserk. There might be something in Berserk.
Hmm.
I forget. There's something that I've looked at recently that where I thought, oh, that kind of looks like the Punpun thing, but I can't tell you off the top of my head. There's some book somewhere with the sticky note on it where I wrote Punpun, and we'll get to it eventually, and then we'll go, oh shit, that was the thing.
I'd be curious if anybody else has any thoughts about that as a visual motif and where that might come from. So let us know in the comments.
Or that strategy in general.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems really fresh to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine if Charlie Brown was in Terry and the Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, something even more realistic than that. It's crazy.
Right.
So yeah, thanks for following along, guys. Definitely go check out Goodnight Punpun. I think we'll be checking in with the series.
Would love to.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.